The crown hadn't glowed in over 3 centuries until they dragged a bloody human diplomat into the throne room. Xander's head throbbed with each heartbeat as the Zavari guards forced him down the emerald and gold corridor. The opulent ceiling blurred above him, its alien curves pulsing in rhythm with his pain. His white diplomatic uniform, once pristine, was now torn and soaked with grime and dried blood. He hadn't slept in 3 days. "Move faster, human," the lead guard hissed, talon-tipped fingers digging into his arm. Xander smirked, despite the sting. "I'd love to, but your hospitality has been lacking." His voice cracked from dehydration, but his sarcasm remained intact. That was something they hadn't managed to break. Yet. They emerged into a vast chamber with a vaulted ceiling that shimmered like starlight, though they were deep within the palace. At its far end, raised upon a dais carved of glowing stone, sat the throne. It was sculpted from a single slab of translucent opal that shimmered in hues of blue and silver. And on that throne, she sat, Queen Veilina. Even through the haze of pain, Xander felt his breath catch. The briefings had not prepared him for the reality. Her skin was a deep, radiant jade with fractal markings that shimmered faintly under the chamber's light. Twin horns curved back elegantly from her forehead, inlaid with what looked like precious metals. Her eyes, violet, sharp, dangerous, narrowed with predatory interest. He was prey. She was the apex. "Present the prisoner," commanded a tall figure in ceremonial armor beside the throne, Captain Krav, head of the Royal Guard. Xander straightened as much as he could. "I represent Earth," he said, his voice hoarse but defiant. "I'll stand." A ripple of whispers passed through the assembled nobles. One guard stepped forward, ready to strike him down, but the Queen raised a single elegant hand. Everything stilled. "The prisoner believes he still has dignity," she said, her voice cold and melodic. "How amusing." She rose with unsettling grace and descended the dais. Her presence was magnetic, each step calculated, each movement unnerving in its alien fluidity. As she circled him, Xander caught a scent like wild jasmine with something sharper. "Do you know why you're here, human?" she asked softly, stopping just behind him. "Because your idea of diplomacy doesn't include immunity," he replied, turning his head to meet her gaze. "Or maybe you're just afraid of what you don't understand." Her hand struck like a viper, slender fingers wrapped around his throat, lifting him effortlessly from the ground. "I could crush your windpipe before your next heartbeat," she whispered. "And yet you haven't," he rasped, eyes locked on hers. Something flickered in her expression, a hesitation. Then she let him drop. He hit one knee, coughing, but didn't look away. "You're bold," she said. "Foolish, perhaps, but bold." She turned to address the court. "This human, this diplomat, is not merely a prisoner. He is here because I want to understand what Earth was hiding behind promises of peace." Xander tried to protest, but a guard silenced him with a blow to the back. "Enough," Queen Veilina said, then gestured. "Bring forth the crown." Gasps echoed through the chamber. From a pedestal beside the throne, Captain Krav retrieved a strange object. A black and silver circlet veined with dim, glassy lines. The sovereign's crown, an artifact older than the empire itself, said to reveal truth and choose rulers. "The crown has been silent for generations," Veilina declared. "But today, we test it again. Place it near the human." As the crown approached Xander, light burst through its veins, white, pulsing, blinding. The chamber erupted in shocked cries. The crown glowed like a star. Xander blinked against the brilliance, his voice dry. "I take it this doesn't usually happen?" Queen Veilina's eyes were wide. Her mask of cold detachment shattered. "Impossible," she breathed. "The crown has chosen no one for 300 years." And now it had chosen him. The crown's light still shimmered faintly as silence gripped the chamber. Queen Veilina's eyes, so often cold and unreadable, now burned with 1,000 questions. Her gaze hadn't left Xander since the moment the artifact flared to life. And yet, It wasn't just confusion or suspicion she projected. It was curiosity. Captain Krav had frozen mid-step, still holding the now glowing circlet as if unsure whether to return it or cast it aside. The court stood in stunned stillness, their faces masks of shock, outrage, or awe. Only Xander moved. He lifted a brow and gave the queen the faintest smirk. "Well," he said dryly, voice still hoarse, "I guess your relic likes me." A few nobles gasped. A murmur of scandal rippled through the chamber like a wave. Insolence. Arrogance. From a human, no less. But Queen Veilina didn't speak immediately. Instead, she descended the last few steps of the dais and stopped just inches from him. The glow from the crown reflected in her violet eyes. "You find amusement in this situation?" she asked, her voice silk-laced with steel. Xander tilted his head, ignoring the ache in his neck. "I find irony. You took me for interrogation, maybe execution, and now your empire's most sacred object is lighting up like it wants to marry me." That earned him a sharp inhale from the crowd. Captain Krav actually flinched. Veilina narrowed her eyes. "The crown does not marry human. It chooses what is optimal for the empire's continuity, stability, and strength." "Funny," Xander said. "That's what my species looks for in a good partner, too." For the first time, her lips twitched. Not a smile. More like an involuntary flicker of amusement she immediately crushed beneath years of royal discipline. "This is not a joke," she said coldly. "I'm aware." He stepped slightly closer, careful, calculated. "I just think your people might be uncomfortable because your all-powerful artifact just did something they can't explain." Veilina's expression hardened. "What are you suggesting?" "That maybe the universe is bigger than your traditions," Xander said, voice softening but steady. "That maybe your crown isn't broken. Maybe it just found what it was looking for in the last place anyone thought to check." "You speak boldly for a man with no standing in this court." He met her gaze unwavering. "I don't need standing." The crown already spoke. Gasps again. A noble in the back actually stumbled. Krav finally found his voice. "Majesty, this must be deception. A trick of human technology." "No," she cut him off, holding up a hand. Her tone silenced the chamber again. She turned back to Xander. "You're not Zavari. You are not even close to what our ancestors would consider worthy. And yet the crown glows. Maybe your ancestors had limited vision," he said before he could stop himself. The queen's eyes flared. Then, against all reason, she laughed. Quiet, brief, but unmistakable. It died quickly, buried beneath the sharp click of her heeled boots as she turned and strode back toward the throne. "The prisoner will not be executed," she declared, voice ringing out across the chamber. "He will be moved to the East Wing royal quarters under heavy guard." The court exploded. "Outrageous! Blasphemy! Your Majesty, the laws—" Veilina raised her hand again, and the chaos died with practiced efficiency. "I will not ignore the crown's judgment," she said. "Not until I understand it." She glanced at Xander once more, her voice low but lethal. "And if you are playing some game, diplomat, one false move, and you'll die before your bones hit the floor." Xander inclined his head. Duly noted. As the guards surrounded him and began leading him away, he glanced back one last time. Queen Veilina was watching him, not like prey, not like a threat, but like a puzzle she didn't yet know how to solve. And that, he realized, was the most dangerous place he could be. 2 days had passed since the crown lit up for Xander, and the palace hadn't stopped buzzing since. Rumors spread faster than light. The human consort, they whispered. The impossible match. Some saw him as a threat, others as an omen. The truth was, even he didn't know what he was. His new quarters were grand, gilded, and far too quiet. Every door still locked. Every window overlooked a 1,000-foot drop. Freedom in design only. Then, everything changed in an instant. Xander was standing in the upper courtyard during one of the Queen's ceremonial processions. Dozens of nobles flanked her as she walked, cloaked in violet robes, her presence a tidal wave of control. The crowd bowed, murmured reverently, kept their distance, except one. A small Zavari child broke away from her mother, toddling straight into the path of a transport sled. The sled, heavily loaded and moving fast, had no chance to stop. Xander didn't think. He vaulted the rail, sprinted, slid across the polished stone floor, and scooped the child into his arms seconds before impact. The sled whooshed past in a gust of air and panic. The entire courtyard froze. The child clung to him, eyes wide, trembling. Xander crouched low, shielding her with his body until her mother, scales rippling in panic, rushed forward and pulled her daughter into her arms. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking. "Thank you, human." Xander nodded, still catching his breath. The crowd parted as Queen Veilina approached, her expression unreadable. The guard stepped aside without command. Xander straightened slowly, her violet eyes locked onto his, searching. "You risked your life for a child that isn't yours, not even your species." He shrugged, heart still racing. "She's a child. Doesn't matter where she came from." A pause. Something flickered in her gaze. Her lips parted slightly as if to speak, but no words came. Then she turned. "To your positions," she ordered. The procession resumed, but the tension had changed. That evening, Xander was summoned again, not to a prison chamber, not to a tribunal, to her private study. A room he hadn't known existed, filled with softly glowing maps and ancient relics. Veilina stood by a projection of Earth and Zavari territories, her back to him. "You understand nothing of our ways," she said, not turning. "Yet you acted today without hesitation." "I didn't need to understand," he said gently. "I just saw someone in danger." "Instinct," she murmured. "Yes." She turned then. The light played against her jade skin, revealing the smallest trace of uncertainty beneath her regal exterior. "You confuse my court," she said. "You confuse me." Xander met her gaze without flinching. "Maybe confusion is where understanding begins." They stood in silence for a long moment, and though neither said the words aloud, something between them had shifted. Not alliance, not yet, but the first step toward something more. A quiet rain fell outside the crystalline windows of the Queen's private study, turning the palace lights into blurred reflections on the glass. Xander stood near a small table adorned with glowing orbs, interactive stellar charts that drifted slowly in the air. They cast soft blues and greens on his face as he examined the map of Zavari territories. He wasn't really studying. He was just existing, letting the silence settle. Behind him, Queen Veilina poured herself a drink from a narrow decanter, something iridescent that shimmered as it caught the light. "You saved a child yesterday," she said, her tone casual, but her voice softer than before. Xander didn't look away from the projection. "She reminded me of my sister," he said quietly. "When she was that age. Wild curls, stubborn as hell, used to sneak into my dad's lab and mess with everything. A beat. She died during the Draxus outbreak. Couldn't get her to medical in time." Veilina didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice had dropped into a register few ever heard from her. "I lost my mother during the Succession War. She was a general, a fierce strategist, always calm, always controlled until the final strike." Xander turned. "She died in battle?" Veilina nodded. "Holding the capital when the outer colonies rebelled. She chose to stay rather than retreat. Said queens don't run." He could almost hear the echo of those words in Veilina's own voice. "And your father?" A pause. "He never wanted the throne. He was a historian, soft-spoken, thought the past held more answers than politics ever could. After she died, he taught me everything. How to stand straight, how not to flinch when the court turned on me." Xander sat down carefully, the chair humming slightly to adjust to his physiology. "My father was an archaeologist," he said. "Frontier dig sites mostly. He believed there were truths buried under every lie history told. When I was 15, his ship vanished near Zavari space." Veilina's gaze sharpened. "You think we were involved?" "I don't know," Xander said honestly. "But if you were, I guess that's fate's twisted way of putting me here." She moved closer. Not threateningly, just within conversational space. Her expression was unreadable, but Her posture had softened. "You talk like someone who's lived 2 lives," she said. "I feel like it," he replied. "One before this room, one after." They stood in silence for a moment. The rain continued to patter gently. "Do you want the crown?" she asked suddenly. He looked at her, startled. "No." That surprised her. You're the first being it's chosen in 3 centuries. You could claim power, influence, station." Xander shook his head. "That's not who I am. I don't want to rule. I want to understand. I came here to negotiate peace. I failed, and now I'm trying not to fail at being human." For the first time, she sat down across from him. Not above, not apart, but level. "You are unlike any diplomat we've encountered," she said quietly. "Most beg. Most lie. You—" Her gaze searched his face. "You push back." "I learned a long time ago that silence doesn't keep you safe," he said. "Sometimes it just buries the truth deeper." Veilina looked away, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I was crowned without the crown's light," she said. "Every nobleman they brought forward to stand beside me. The artifact rejected them all. After the 3rd rejection, I stopped believing it mattered. And then I showed up and lit it up like a holiday tree," Xander said dryly. A reluctant laugh escaped her lips. "Yes, infuriating, isn't it?" "A little," he admitted. "Mostly confusing." They both paused, caught in the strange warmth blooming between them. She set her drink down and stood, walking to the window. "The court is watching us. Every word, every breath." "I've noticed," he said, following her gaze out to the garden below. "What they see might shape the fate of both our peoples." Xander stepped beside her. "Then maybe they should see something real." Her breath caught. "What is real here, Xander?" He hesitated. "You, me, this moment. The fact that we both carry ghosts, and maybe, for once, we don't have to carry them alone." Veilina turned to face him, her expression unreadable. But her silence was not rejection. It was consideration, reflection, understanding. And in that rain-soaked hush, something subtle but unshakable passed between them. Not surrender, but the start of trust. The moment passed, but the current remained. That silent, rain-soaked spark between them had not faded. It lingered in glances held too long, in words chosen too carefully. In the slight way Queen Veilina leaned closer when she thought no one was watching. But in Zavari courts, nothing stayed hidden for long. Not affection, not treason. The explosion rocked the eastern wing just after sunrise. Windows shattered, ceilings cracked. The alarm sirens screamed like dying beasts across the palace corridors. Xander bolted upright from bed, reaching instinctively for Veilina's side, only to find cool, empty sheets. Still warm. He stumbled to his feet as the chamber doors burst open. "Captain Krav." "We're under attack," he barked. "Rebels inside the palace. The Queen's location is unknown." Xander was already throwing on clothes. "Where was she last?" "Emergency council session. But they've breached the council chamber." Another blast. Closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. They ran. The halls were chaos. Smoke, flickering lights, nobles and servants screaming, guards clashing with armored insurgents. "Who's behind this?" Xander yelled as they dodged falling debris. Krav's face was grim. Malric! Malric, her most trusted advisor. The one always standing just behind her throne, calm and calculating. The betrayal hit like a punch to the chest. They turned a corner and stopped. Half a dozen guards blocked the passage to the council wing, weapons raised. But something was wrong. Their stances weren't defensive. They were waiting. A voice emerged from behind them. Cold. Familiar. "The human will come with us." Malric. He stepped forward, clad not in royal uniform but black ceremonial armor. His expression was devoid of warmth. "What the hell is this?" Xander demanded. "Purification," Malric said. "The Queen has been compromised by alien influence. The Council has temporarily relieved her of command." Krav stepped in front of Xander. "The Council has no such authority." "In times of monarchical instability," Malric cut in, "emergency protocols activate. By law, I now hold interim power." "This is a coup," Xander growled. Malric didn't deny it. "Seize them." The clash was brutal. Krav fought like a Zavari war god, and Xander held his own, with raw desperation. But they were outnumbered. Xander took a hard blow to the head, stars exploding behind his eyes. Darkness swallowed him. He woke to the sterile chill of a detention cell. His wrists were bound by glowing restraints. Across the room, crumpled against the wall, Veilina. Her hair was loose, her royal regalia stripped. A cruel metal collar circled her neck, one of the old inhibitors that suppressed Zavari psionics. Veilina, Xander croaked. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. Dull at first, then burning with fury when they saw him. "You should have gone," she rasped. "The Earth fleet was coming." "They were coming for the wrong reasons," he said. "And I wasn't leaving you." She gave a bitter laugh. "You're a fool," he smiled faintly. "So I've been told." A hiss. Then the door opened. Malric entered, flanked by 2 guards. He looked at them like insects. "How touching," he sneered. "The queen and her pet human. Enjoy your final night." "We will not bow," Veilina spat. "You already have." He turned to Xander. "You'll be executed publicly. She will watch. Then she'll follow." "She's your queen," Xander roared, struggling against the restraints. Malric stepped close. "She was, until she allowed herself to be tainted, until she chose you." His gaze turned venomous. "You were never meant to be part of our bloodline." Xander's voice dropped, deadly calm. "Then why did the crown choose me?" Malric froze. Just for a second. Then he turned and left. Later that night, huddled in the cold cell, Veilina pressed her forehead to Xander's. "If this is our last night," she whispered, "I don't want to waste it on regret." He touched her face gently, his own throat tight. "No regret. Never. I thought the crown cursed me," she murmured. "But now, maybe it gave me you." The cell faded away. The war, the pain, the betrayal. And for one night, they were just 2 souls clinging to the only truth that remained. Each other. The cell was cold. The silence. Worse. Outside, the palace shook with conflict they couldn't see. Loyalists and rebels fought in distant halls, but down here, time stood still. Their world had narrowed to 4 metal walls, 2 wounded hearts, and the hours before dawn. Xander sat beside Veilina, his back against the same wall she leaned on. The glow of their restraints painted soft blue shadows across their faces. Her hair was loose now, cascading over one shoulder, dark and luminous against her jade skin. The control collar on her neck still hummed faintly, a cruel reminder of her vulnerability. "I hate this collar," he muttered, reaching out without thinking. She flinched, only slightly, but didn't stop him. He touched the edge of it, fingers brushing her skin. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "It just reminds me I'm not who I'm supposed to be." He met her gaze. "And who are you supposed to be?" "A queen." Her voice cracked. "Untouchable. Unbreakable." "You're still her," he said quietly. "But right now, I'm glad you're just Veilina." She turned her head toward him. The flickering light caught the silver threads in her eyes, ancient and tired. "I never let anyone in," she confessed. "Not really. The crown rejected every potential consort. I thought maybe I was the one unworthy." "You're not," Xander said, firm. She laughed, a soft, painful sound. "Even now? Chained in a cell? About to die?" He shifted closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "Especially now." They sat like that for a while, silence filled with everything words couldn't say, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but dense with the weight of truth. "Xander," she said, his name soft like a secret. He looked at her. Veilina moved slowly, deliberately, never breaking his gaze, as she raised her hand and rested it against his cheek. Her fingers were cool, but her touch warmed him. "Why does it feel like I've known you longer than this?" she asked. "Because maybe we were supposed to find each other a long time ago," he replied. Their lips met like an answer. No rush. No desperation. Just need. A need not born of fear, but of understanding, of choosing each other, even with no tomorrow promised. Her kiss was soft at first, uncertain, then deeper, fiercer, like she was memorizing him, each breath, each tremor in his hands. Xander's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. The warmth of her body pressed against his, the hum of her psionics flickering under his skin. Not painful, just alive. She climbed into his lap slowly, straddling him, her knees on either side, as if reclaiming some lost sense of power, of control. But her eyes searched his with a fragility she'd never let anyone see. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice low, reverent. Veilina nodded, lowering her forehead to his. "This may be the only thing I choose for myself." His hands moved up her back, slow, reverent, learning every line of muscle, every curve. Her armor was gone. All that remained was skin, breath, and the electricity between them. The cell faded. The war disappeared. There was only the press of her lips on his throat, the soft gasp when his fingers found the small of her back, the sigh that escaped her when they finally let go of everything except each other. She whispered his name like a prayer. He whispered hers, like a promise. They moved together not out of lust, but of necessity, of finally being seen, of finally being wanted, not as symbols or rulers or threats, but as people. When it was over, they remained tangled in the silence. Her head rested on his chest, rising and falling with each breath. "I've never done that with anyone," she murmured. "Me neither," he said. She looked up, arching a brow. "Seriously?" He grinned sleepily. "Not in an alien prison cell, no." She laughed. It was the first real laugh he'd ever heard from her, free and unguarded. "You're ridiculous," she said. "Possibly." Veilina's fingers traced lazy circles along his ribs. "This changes everything," she said. "Or maybe it just reveals what was always there." Her smile faded into something quieter, more intimate. "If we survive tomorrow?" "We will," Xander said. "If we do," she continued, "would you still choose me, even if the crown hadn't?" Xander met her eyes without hesitation. "The crown didn't choose for me." I did. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she kissed him again, slowly, reverently. Outside, dawn crawled closer, but inside that cold, forgotten cell, warmth bloomed like a sun between two people who had no business falling in love, yet had done so anyway. It began with a faint hum, barely audible, just enough to stir Xander from his drifting half-sleep, Veilina's head still resting on his chest. He blinked. "Do you hear that?" Veilina stirred, brow furrowing. "Yes, it's coming from beneath us." They sat up together, alert now. The sound grew, still soft, but constant, a low-frequency resonance, the kind you didn't hear so much as feel in your bones. "It's not the guards," Xander said. "This is something else." Then he noticed it. The panel on the far wall, bare metal moments ago, was glowing faintly along its seams. Symbols etched in Zavari script flickered into view. Veilina's eyes widened. "That's ancient dialect," she whispered. "Pre-imperial. I've only ever seen it in archive fragments." She rose to her feet, moving with a grace that seemed to return with each heartbeat. Despite the control collar, her instincts were awakening. Xander stood beside her, the echo of their shared warmth still lingering between them. As they approached the wall, the glow intensified. Suddenly, the restraints on their wrists deactivated with a soft click. They looked at each other. "You didn't do that, did you?" he asked. She shook her head. "Number." The cell responded. "To us." The wall trembled, then shifted. A vertical seam split open with a hiss of ancient hydraulics. Dust poured from the hidden line as the panel slid aside, revealing a narrow stairway descending into blackness. Xander blinked. Okay. Definitely not a standard prison feature. "Not even close," Veilina said, stepping forward. "Wait," he caught her wrist. "What is this place?" She turned, violet eyes reflecting the pulsing light. The palace was built atop the ruins of Zavari Prime's first city. Some say there are chambers beneath even the royal architects never mapped. He swallowed. So we're walking into ancient history, without a map. "Welcome to Zavari politics," she said dryly, and stepped into the darkness. Xander followed. The stairwell was narrow, lit only by the soft bioluminescent glow of the walls. Vines threaded through the stone like veins. As they descended, the air grew warmer, charged. The stairs ended in a chamber far beneath the palace, and at its center stood a structure unlike anything Xander had seen. A spherical device floating above the ground, its surface etched with the same alien script, only now it glowed in rhythm with their heartbeats. "This is a seed core," Veilina said in awe. "I thought they were only myth." "What does it do?" Xander asked. "They say the core contains genetic archives and world-shaping blueprints, meant to rebuild civilizations after collapse. It predates even the Zavari Empire." She stepped closer, hand outstretched. The core pulsed in response. "It's reacting to you," Xander whispered. "No," she said slowly, turning toward him. "To us." The core flared. Projections burst into the air. Maps, DNA strands, ancient royal lines, all woven together in a cosmic tapestry. And there, at the center, a combined sequence. Zavari. Human. Hybrid. Xander's breath caught. This is proof." Veilina nodded slowly. "It confirms what the Crown suspected. The potential of a shared future. Of a child not just symbolic, but genetically revolutionary." A sound echoed behind them. Boots. They turned as Captain Krav emerged from the stairwell, flanked by Counselor Thalia and a small squad. "Thea's faction secured the East Wing," Krav said. "We have a window, but not for long." Thalia's eyes widened as she saw the projections. "The core awakened," she breathed. "It hasn't activated in over 1,000 years." Krav turned to Xander and Veilina. "Whatever you're about to do it now." Veilina took Xander's hand, their fingers intertwined, firm, steady. And in that moment, surrounded by ancient echoes and living proof, they knew. This wasn't just survival, it was destiny. The chamber pulsed with light. The seed core continued to display the combined genome, Zavari and human, projected in radiant arcs above Xander and Veilina. The strands spiraled in perfect symmetry, glowing brighter with every beat of their hearts. But it wasn't the light that made Veilina sway slightly. It was the truth, unraveling inside her. She clutched her stomach instinctively, a hand drifting lower without conscious thought. Her breathing shallowed. A tremor passed through her frame. "Veilina?" Xander stepped forward. "What's wrong?" Her eyes locked on the genetic projection, then shifted to a new readout, one that had silently appeared below the DNA strand. It showed vital signs, her vital signs, and another set. Smaller, newer, growing. Xander followed her gaze, piecing it together. "Wait, is that—" Veilina's voice trembled, the unshakable queen undone by a simple truth. "I'm pregnant." The room spun in his mind. The shock slammed into Xander like atmospheric compression. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as the answer flickered above them in glowing certainty. "The core detected it," Thalia said softly. "There's no error." Veilina's hand remained over her abdomen. She stared at the pulsing image in silence, half in awe, half in terror. "It's barely been a day," Xander said, bewildered. "Zavari reproductive timelines differ," Thalia explained. "The core is ancient technology. It doesn't just detect, it projects." "You're saying it's predicting the child?" Xander asked. "No," Veilina answered, voice firming. "It's confirming one already exists." The silence that followed was deafening. Krav cleared his throat. "We need to move. The rebels will detect the core's energy signature. They'll come for it. And for you." But Veilina didn't move. She stared at the glowing sequence. Her child. Their child. "This child will have power beyond comprehension," Thalia said reverently. "A hybrid heir to two species, with the ability to unite or divide the galaxy. And every faction that fears change will want it destroyed," Veilina added, her voice now cold steel. She turned to Xander. "Do you understand what this means?" He nodded slowly. "It means the stakes just changed. Again." Her violet eyes shimmered. "I thought the Crown chose you as a consort, a symbol. But this is legacy." Xander reached for her hand. She didn't resist. "We'll protect it," he said. Veilina exhaled. "Even if it means war?" He didn't flinch. "Especially if it means hope." A moment passed. Then the queen stood taller, fire rekindled in her spine. She faced Krav and Thalia. "We reveal nothing to the court yet. Not until we secure the palace and the crown." "What about the child?" Thalia asked gently. Veilina's voice was a blade. "The child is mine, and no one will touch it." Her gaze met Xander's again, and something unspoken passed between them. Not just fear, not just love, but promise. Then the core dimmed, its message delivered. And the future, once uncertain, now pulsed inside her. The seed core dimmed, but what it left behind pulsed in every heart present. The child, the proof, the future. They couldn't stay hidden. Time was up. Veilina squeezed Xander's hand once, firm, unyielding, and turned to Krav. "Take us to the council chamber, now." Krav nodded. "Thea's forces have already breached the outer defenses. We've secured the east wing and the grand hall. Malric is holed up in the throne chamber. Broadcast preparations underway." "Then we end this," Veilina said. They moved fast through the palace tunnels, now alive with shouts, energy blasts, and the pulse of rebellion. Loyalists and rebels clashed in every hall, but more and more turned upon seeing Veilina leading the charge, Croissant, with the human consort beside her. By the time they reached the central chamber, the throne room was already in chaos. Malric stood before the sovereign's crown, which had been placed at the center of the dais like a trophy. He was surrounded by guards, a broadcast drone floating above his head, live feeding his lies to the Empire. "And so, with great regret, we purge the false queen, tainted by alien blood." He stopped, because the doors blew open, and Veilina stepped through the smoke. Every eye turned. She was regal, wounded but unbroken, and at her side, Xander, alive, unbound, hand in hand. "The crown has already chosen," she said, voice like thunder. "And it was not you, Malric." Gasps, whispers. Malric's face twisted in rage. "Seize them!" But no one moved. Too many had seen the projections. Too many had heard rumors of the core awakening. And then, there was the way Veilina's skin seemed to glow. Not from power, but from purpose. She stepped forward and held out her hand. Krav placed the sovereign's crown into her palm. It pulsed to life. Bright, fierce. And then, something new. As Veilina turned to Xander and took his other hand, the crown flared even brighter, blinding. The broadcast drone captured everything. Zavari, human, united. The room fell silent under the weight of it. Veilina raised her voice, not as a queen speaking to her court, but as a mother, a leader, a woman who had seen too much and still stood tall. There will be no more purges, no more lies, no more fear of change. The Empire will not fall today. It will rise. Xander stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm. "I didn't come here to divide. I came to understand. I came to offer peace, and found something I never expected." He looked to Veilina, to their clasped hands, "And now I stand here not as a prisoner, but as a partner, as family." The crowd stirred. Something broke. Something healed. Then someone cheered, and another. Soon the hall erupted, not in war cries but in hope. Weeks passed. The Empire didn't collapse. It transformed. Malric was tried and exiled, his collusion with off-world factions laid bare by Thea's faction and the Seed Corps records. Zoran's traditionalist faction lost influence as the court, and the people saw what the crown had seen all along. Hope. Veilina and Xander weren't just survivors. They had become a symbol, the royal couple that should never have existed. And yet, they did. Hand in hand, head held high. Together they initiated sweeping reforms. Hybrid research was made public. The Seed Corps' archives became the foundation of a new scientific renaissance. And for the first time, the palace opened its gates to Earth diplomats, invited not as adversaries, but as allies. One evening, under the glow of the 3 moons, Veilina and Xander walked through the Eternal Gardens. The air shimmered with soft light from bioluminescent vines that now responded subtly to Veilina's presence. She rested a hand on her abdomen. "You can feel it, can't you?" Xander asked, watching her with a softness he rarely showed in public. She nodded, lips curling into a small smile. "Yes, every day. Stronger, quieter, and yet so full of everything." He stepped closer, gently wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands joining hers over the small curve of her stomach. "They'll ask what species the child belongs to," she murmured. "Let them," Xander said. "We'll raise them with both worlds." Veilina turned, resting her forehead against his. "They'll grow up with stars in their blood and fire in their name," he whispered. They stayed like that for a moment. No crown, no throne, no burden, just breath and heartbeat. Later that week, Veilina stood once again before the nobles, this time with Xander beside her and the Seed Corps' holograms playing behind them. She spoke of renewal, of unity, of mistakes made and futures worth rewriting. And when she said, "This empire shall be ruled not by bloodline alone, but by bond, by vision, by choice," the chamber rose to its feet. It was not the beginning of a fairy tale. It was the first chapter of something better. Not a perfect future, but a shared one.